Okay, gotta go. Bye. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, welcome. You may be wondering why you're here. You've actually been nominated by some of your peers for the Mom of the Year award. But in order to get it, I have to ask you a few questions. Sound good?
Yes, I have a soccer game to get to.
That's
so
fine.
like
It'll be fast.
real fast. Okay, cool.
First, how are you feeling today?
Tired. Very tired. Always.
Yeah, I thought so. How do you celebrate Mother's Day?
By reminding everybody that it's Mother's Day all day.
Yeah, sounds about right. Okay, what is the number one import of a mother?
Unsolicited parenting advice. Definitely.
Correct. How about export?
Unconditional love.
Cute and correct. Who do mothers talk to the most?
Themselves. Passive aggressively. Mommy's very busy right now. Mommy can't help you. But maybe when mommy's done cleaning the dishes and doing the laundry and picking up all the toys, maybe mommy will have time then.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, how does a mother shower? I didn't write these. No, that's weird.
Not alone.
But correct. How does a mother use the bathroom? Wow, weirder.
With an audience. Always.
Also correct. What is a mother's number one competitive sport?
The Buy Sell Nothing Facebook page.
Correct, absolutely. What did you say you would never do as a parent?
Use devices as a babysitter.
Correct. And just a question as a follow-up. Do your kids have nicknames?
Yes. iPad, Switch, and Bluey. They answer them interchangeably.
Yeah, thought so. Absolutely. Okay, rapid fire. Where do kids go for food?
Mom.
Okay. When they're hurt?
Mom.
Yes. When they want to cuddle?
Mom.
Okay. For fun?
Mom.
Actually, incorrect. That is dad. Whoa. Okay, hold on. Next question is, who can give a look who could kill? Clearly, you can, so correct. Okay, we'll move on. How does a kid ask for help?
Mom. Mommy. Mom. 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 Mom.
Yeah, you can stop. That's correct. What do you want for Mother's Day?
Peace. No arguing.
Yeah.
Calm. Ooh, a nap. A nap? A nap.
Can you elaborate?
A long nap?
Yeah, a long nap sounds nice, but what are you actually going to get?
Another mug or cup that says Mom on it.
100%. All right, one last section. Let's play a little game of finish that sentence, shall we? Sound good? Money.
Doesn't grow on trees.
Right. What part of?
No, don't you understand?
Yeah, definitely. Life.
Isn't always fair.
That's it. Don't.
Make me turn this car around.
Man, crushing it right now. Okay, one more thing. Last question. Tell me a motherhood secret.
Some days are really, really hard, but secretly I love it.
Absolutely. Wow, correct. It's an amazing score. Thanks for coming in today. But before you go, can I actually get that cup? Because I forgot to get my wife something for Mother's Day.
I have 8 at home. Take
Okay,
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, happy Mother's Day. We want to honor all of our moms, and I hope that if you're a mom, you feel how much we value you today. And also, I think it's important that we acknowledge that Mother's Day can also carry a tinge of grief from those of us with moms who are no longer here, like mine, to those who hoped to become a mom and weren't able. We want you to know that we see you and we value you too. More importantly, God sees you and he knows. So today might not be a celebration necessarily for you, but we're still glad that you're here and hope that you find this time together to be a valuable investment. You know, ordinary doesn't make news. Change makes news. Controversy makes news. Tragedy makes news. But ordinary seems normal. It's not headline worthy. For example, one of my favorite places on the planet, if I'm honest, I think my favorite place on the planet is Hawaii. I've been there a couple of times. I fell in love with the place. It's just amazing. And so whenever somebody tells me, hey, I'm thinking about doing a trip to Hawaii, I might start talking and stop talking 2 or 3 hours later. It's just that amazing. But the most boring job on the planet has to be a particular role in Hawaii. Namely, it's the weather person. So I pulled up, this is the actual weather report. I don't usually keep my phone with me on these moments, but here's the actual weather report starting today for Hawaii. High temperatures, 80, 79. 79, 80. And here's the low temperature for the next 10 days, 70, 70, 70, 70, 71, 70, 69. It's got right cold, 70. That's it. It's got to be the most boring job on the planet. It's not newsworthy. That's just normal. Now you and I, we could have a debate about the emotional and psychological health of a society that thrives only on chaos and writes off all the ho-hum of everyday life, but the argument would be futile. When something is normal, it's not attention grabbing. That's just the way it works. And that's not a new thing. It's as ancient as Noah building a boat in the desert. Different just gets noticed, and so does strange. Which is why we've been looking at some of the strange things that happen in the Bible, because I think that God put them in there so that we would read them and take a look and sit up and perhaps in the process hear God's voice to each of us. That's my prayer for all of us today as we encounter God literally through superhuman strength, so much so as to be strange. We've always been fascinated by superhuman strength. I know that today we build machines that are able to do what apparently is a miraculous thing, but there is something fascinating when a human being does things that a human being should not be able to do. For example, in the early 1900s, there was this guy named John Holtum, and he drew these massive crowds in cities around the world because he could literally catch a cannonball as it was fired at him from a cannon. And he would do it like this. He would stand on one side of the stage. They would put the cannon on the other side of the stage. His assistant would aim the gun right at him and fire the 50-pound cannonball. This required incredible strength and really fast reflexes, but Holtum would catch the thing with his hands and into his chest. He lost 3 fingers on his first try, and miraculously, he didn't quit. He just kept going until he perfected his technique. And then there's this guy named Louis Cyr. I know, he's a big guy. He doesn't really look like anything particularly special, but really from his first breath, he was extraordinarily strong. He was born in 1863, and on the day of his birth, he weighed 18 pounds. Happy Mother's Day to her. He became a lumberjack when he was 12. He could lift a horse off the ground, and he would carry a platform on his back while 18 men stood on it. A movie was actually made about him just a few years ago. My favorite of these is a guy named Sigmund Breitbart, though. He was born in Poland and into a very Orthodox Jewish family in a time where anti-Jewish sentiment, kind of covered the world. And he was determined to make his Jewish heritage and his people proud again. They called him Zisha for reasons I never quite figured out. And he was world renowned. There were times when he was performing in front of crowds of 85,000 people. And his specialty was bending iron. He could bend an iron bar around his arm with his hands. He could bite through iron chain and pull iron chains apart. But one of the things he would do is he would carry a baby elephant while he climbed a ladder. After traveling around the world, it became his life goal to go back to Palestine and to reenact some of the famous feats of another very famous Jewish person who was superhuman strong, a guy we're going to look at today in the Strange Things series. And Sigmund wanted to do that so he could bring attention to Jewish people and maybe help them have their own homeland, which would not happen until much later. But before he could get there and do all these things, he was on his last tour of Europe. And one of the things he was doing was he was taking a railroad spike and banging it through a 5-inch piece of oak with his hand. And the spike pierced his leg. It caused a terrible infection. He had to have 10 operations. They amputated both legs, and then he died 8 weeks later. Even the strongest humans, even those with incredible strength, are in the end still human beings. But for a time, perhaps, they and we can be deluded into thinking that they're invincible. That was certainly true for a guy named Samson. Now, you might have heard of his legendary story before. Samson had superhuman strength, and he had a super obvious flaw. Well, it's obvious to us. It wasn't so obvious to him. From his story, we're going to discover how you and I can tap into a kind of power that is greater than any normal human being, and we can learn how to avoid the pitfall that was ultimately his demise. We read about Samson in the pages of the Bible in this book called Judges. It's the 7th book of the Bible. And Samson's story is told there over about 4 chapters. And let me step back and give you the bigger picture of the Judges era. This is a time when the people of God, often called the Israelites or the Jews or the Hebrews, those are kind of interchangeable. The Israelites were led by these people who had the title of judge, hence the name of the book. But their use of the word judge is not the same way that you and I think of it. When you and I think of a judge, we think of a man or a woman who sits behind a bench and bangs a gavel as they administer justice in a supposedly impartial, unbiased way, all of it for the common good. But the Hebrew concept of a judge was somebody whose job it was to be active and participate in the advancement of the Israelite cause. So the book of Judges is not really about wise people who hear legal arguments and issue fair, impartial verdicts. Instead, in Hebrew, which is the language this part of the Bible was written in, a judge and a helper are almost the same word. They go hand in hand. The judge in the book of judges were not impartial. He or she, there was at least one woman judge, would be an advocate for the Israelites against their enemies. One example of this is in Judges 3:10. It says this, that the Spirit of the Lord came on him, this particular judge, so that he became Israel's judge and went to war. And that's what a judge would do. So instead of a courtroom-style judge, we would be more accurate to think of these people as Wild West, frontier-style deliverers. Think John Dutton. They defend, they lead into battle, they protect their people, and they do all of that far more than they interpret law, if you will. And here's another important piece. Many of these judges were not especially religious role models, and that's certainly true of Samson. By the time we get to Judges 13, where we start reading his story, the Israelites had become fickle in their faithfulness and their commitment to God. Sometimes they would passionately follow God with dedication, and other times they seemed to go astray, which I don't know about you, but sounds a bit familiar to me. It goes like this. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, so the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. So during one of these eras, when the Israelites were being oppressed at the hands of their enemies, God steps in and he appoints this unborn child, and God sets apart this child in an especially religious way so that this person can be used by God and lead his people back to him. And the way he does it is God speaks to this woman called Manoah. So God is talking here, and he says to her, you will become pregnant, and you'll have a son whose head is to never be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazarite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines. So God decides that Samson is going to be a Nazarite in this, and this is really important to the Samson story. In Numbers 6, another part of the Bible, God tells Moses that a man can voluntarily take a special vow of dedication to God for a period of time. This vow is totally up to the man. He gets to decide if he's going to do it. And if he does it, he's agreeing to 3 things. Number 1, the Nazarite vow said that you could never have, during the period of the vow, you can't have anything that's fermented. So no wine. And not only no wine, you're not allowed to eat or drink anything that might become fermented. So they can't have grapes, raisins, grape juice, grape seeds, grape skins, nothing like that. That's number 1. Number 2, they cannot cut their hair during the period of the vow. And number 3, they can't get near a dead body of any kind, not even if it's their wife or their mom or their child. Now, any of these 3 things that they commit to become a Nazarite would be a sacrifice for a Jewish person. So these extra restrictions were designed to indicate your extra devotion to God. I'm especially devoted to God because I'm a Nazarite. And if you read Numbers chapter 6, you'll see that in this covenant, this Nazarite covenant, nowhere does God say that if you follow these things, I'm going to give you superhuman strength just by virtue of taking this special vow. Now, other Nazarites, there were others, they were also committed to God, but they weren't given special powers. This will become important in a few minutes. But Samson was not an ordinary Nazarite. He wasn't ordinary, namely because he didn't enter this commitment voluntarily. He didn't choose to do it. God decided it for him. And so he was created by God, set apart to be both leader, which is judge, and to be a Nazarite, which included all of these restrictions that I just told you about. He was supposed to be completely dedicated to God in heart and soul and his actions. And for a while, God then empowers Samson. God just decides to give Samson these incredible abilities. For example, one day he's taking a walk, and suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him, and the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him so that he tore the lion apart with his bare hands. This is the first time that we see Samson is not an ordinary human. And it's the first time, but it's not the last time. Now, I don't have time to read the whole thing to you. It's only 4 chapters, and I promise you, you won't be bored. You should read it sometime after church today. It's highly entertaining. It reads sort of like the Bible's version of Gladiator, sort of the ancient version of the Incredible Hulk, minus the green skin and all. And when I was growing up, it kind of reminds me, I watched the Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno combination. I know that dates me just a bit, but their version of Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk was a show that when I was a kid, I never missed. Every episode was riveting to me. And I said then, and I'm occasionally caught saying now, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. That was the tagline of the show. There was something incredible for me, fascinating about the Hulk. Even if you're not a Hulk fan, we're all mesmerized by these tales of people who can do what no ordinary human should be able to do. And maybe those stories, maybe the reason we love those stories is because there are a few moments in all of our lives where we're required to have a measure of something that we just don't normally have, but we need to swell it up somewhere. I actually had something happen like that to me a few years ago. Susan and I were canoeing on the Shenandoah River, and we had done this several times. It was something we enjoyed doing, and on this particular day, it was beautiful. The water was warm, the humidity in the air was low. It was just the perfect day. And I don't know if you've ever done anything like this, but if you only got one car, the easiest way to do it is you go to like a rafting company and you pay them, and they load the canoe and everything, and they drive you to a put-in spot, and then you work the river as it flows back to the landing where the canoe company is. And so I was standing at the counter, and it's noon. It's around lunchtime, and there were strict instructions. You had to be at the landing area by 5:30 because they close at 5:30. And if you're not there at 5:30, they're going to charge you a whole pile of money. So I'm looking at the brochure, and it's got all these trips listed. And I like trip number 5, which is 16 miles. But, the girl's telling me, based on the river conditions and the water speed, the flow of the water, she said, I just don't think you have enough time for that trip. That was trip number 5. Then there was trip number 4, was like a half a mile. I thought that was kind of wimpy, not quite adventurous enough. So I'm trying to decide, and there's another employee, and he's behind the counter, and he's not the person we're talking to, but he kind of injects himself into our conversation, and he says, hey, man, he says, I know about a trip that's not on the brochure. And it's 14 and a half miles, and it's just right. And I said to him, do I have enough time? I mean, the other one's 16 miles. I mean, it's not that much different. Do I have enough time? And he smiled, and he said confidently, absolutely. You will have no trouble getting back in 5.5 hours. So we paid the fee. A half an hour later, we were in our canoe, the pristine, untouched mountain river wilderness. It was absolutely stunning. We were enjoying the moment. We swam. We marveled at the scenery. The water was crystal clear. There was a light summer breeze. There were butterflies and turtles. You could see the fish all the way to the bottom. We stopped for a picnic lunch. It was like the most amazing thing ever. And every so often, they told us, you'll see a mile marker like tagged to a tree, so you can figure out where you are. And so we started at mile marker 25, and where the boat landing was we had to get to was mile marker 40. So after 2 hours, we see like a mile marker on a tree, but I couldn't quite make it out. It's too far away. So I said to Susan, well, that's got to be like number 35. Surely we've gone 10 miles by now. It's been 2 hours. At least 8 or 9 miles. But when it came into view and we could see it, we realized it was mile marker 27. We had gone 2 miles in 2 hours. I'm not a math major, but I think that's a mile an hour. Needless to say, the nice relaxing day was over. We turned that canoe into a speedboat. And for the next 3 hours, we paddled as hard and as fast as we possibly could. The river was so low, it was moving so slow that there were times we had to get out of the boat and pull it across the rapids, which should have been called slows, delays, or take your sweet time, because they were the exact opposite of rapid. We rode until I was soaking in sweat, longing to jump into the water and get refreshed, but I didn't have time. The wake of the boat, we look behind, it looks like we're moving. I'm thinking the effort is paying off here. We finally get to another mile marker, and it's 29. We spent another hour. Great, we've doubled our speed. Now we're going 2 miles an hour. At this rate, we won't make breakfast the next day. And so I'm barking orders from the back of the boat, and I'm moving as fast as I can, and Susan's pushing her oar with all she's got. People in the campgrounds, we're passing by them, they're smiling and waving. We didn't wave back, we didn't have time, and frankly, I didn't want to. I was so mad at everybody. My parched lips, having long ago been quenched by the last of our bottled water, looked like I was stranded in the desert, not surrounded by millions of gallons of water. And so there was no time for a break for water anyway, even if I'd had some. So we paddled and paddled until I couldn't feel my shoulders, until there were blisters on our hands, until there was a lovely family of buzzards who started circling overhead, waiting for us to kill over on this floating restaurant that they could participate in. Finally, Susan says to me, you should call them. I'm thinking, call who? I don't think AAA comes out here in the wilderness. Call the canoe company, she said. It's 5:30. Time's up. And so I said, look, I'll try to call somebody when we round the next corner and I can figure out where we are. But I'm not sure she heard what I said because nothing came out. Like I had no voice left. And so finally we turned the corner, and there on this rock above this big bank was painted the sign of this canoe company. And we had arrived there, but it actually felt a lot like heaven to me. An employee was standing at the boat landing. They were clearly unhappy. It was past time. They were impatiently waiting for us. I drifted onto shore. My arms went limp. The shoulders were burned red from the hot sun. We fell out of the canoe and just laid there for a while, vowing to pick the half-miler next time, which we did, by the way. You know, if the guy who had sold us this trip and told me it would be no problem had been the employee standing there, there'd be a little bit different ending to this story. Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. I still don't know how we made it. We shouldn't have been able to get there in that amount of time. It felt a bit like a miracle to me. But Samson's superhuman strength wasn't a one-time thing when he killed the lion that day. It was a regular occurrence. It became normal for him. We're even told that one time, if you read the story, you'll see one time Samson defeats 1,000 men by himself. He beats them with the jawbone of a donkey. Now, I had no idea what the jawbone of a donkey looked like, so we went and found one. Yes, you can buy a real donkey jawbone online. It is true, apparently. Amazon sells everything. So this seems a bit harmless to me, but actually, there are these super specialized musicians who play it. And he wiggles, these teeth aren't all, like this guy needed a dentist. I don't know, maybe that's what killed him. But they play this like a piece of percussion. And I started thinking about, sometimes I do this, I started thinking, what an odd, strange band this would make. Like there's one guy who plays a chicken leg. Not metaphorically, he actually makes music with the leftovers from a KFC bucket. And another guy, maybe he finds the soothing sounds of a fish eyeball. And we round out the band with a donkey jawbone. Samson, of course, didn't play it as an instrument. He weaponized it. and he was a menace to his enemies. And they had no idea how to beat him. But it turns out they didn't have to, because Samson would beat himself. There's just a little bit more to the story before we get to that, and some practical application for you and me. Samson insists on marrying a Philistine woman. Remember now, the Philistines are like the arch enemy of the people of God. And God had specifically prohibited an Israelite, particularly a Nazarite, from marrying a Philistine. Also, Samson's parents tried to forbid him to do it, but Samson's supposed to obey and all of God's rules and all of God's laws, and that includes honoring your father and mother. But Samson just ignores all of that, and he marries this girl anyway. And he throws up a feast at the wedding reception, which almost certainly includes wine, and he almost certainly enjoys some of it, another violation of his vow. And at the feast, he does some gambling, which is also prohibited. And when he loses, he murders a bunch of people to pay his bookie. Oh yeah, and the lion he killed, one day he's walking on the same path and he sees the carcass of the lion that he killed, and a hive of bees has made their home in it. And so he dips his hand in the carcass so that he can get some honey out. Again, one of his commitments was not to get near a dead body of any kind. And so it's just not hard to look at the whole story and see that Samson is not all that committed to being a Nazarite. And he's not taking this vow very seriously. Samson develops an anger problem. He's got this massive ego, some major character gaps, especially when it comes to escapades with women. One time he pays a prostitute for sex, but at least he hasn't cut his hair. It's probably the only part of the vow that's still unviolated, his beautiful, uncut, flowing hair. But all of that changes when he meets a woman named Delilah. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so that we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued." And Samson answered her, "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have never been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man." He lies to her. He clearly doesn't trust her. Then the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had never been dried, and she tied him up with them. And with the men hidden in the room, I just want to pause here and say, this just seems weird to me. Like, how are these guys hiding in the room? Like, I haven't figured that out. If you figured it out, let me know. With the men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame, so the secret of his strength was not discovered. Now, you would think that any half-brained dude would dump Delilah right here. I mean, she asks his secret. He clearly doesn't trust her. He tests her loyalty with a false answer. She betrays him. He foils the plot. Clearly, Delilah is not on his side. Any idiot can see this. But instead of walking away, they go through this exercise again. She asks, he lies. She calls the Philistines, who are still somehow hidden in the room. Samson breaks free. 3 times in a row this happens, and with epic stupidity that matches his epic strength, Samson unbelievably finally caves and tells her the truth. With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. I love that phrase. Till he was sick to death of it. You got to say it like that too. So he told her everything. "No razor's ever been used on my head," he said, "because I've been a Nazarite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me and I would become as weak as any other man." Even if you never heard this story before today, and some of us have, now you know. So if I were to ask our church, if I were to ask you, what is the secret to Samson's strength? Anybody reading this story would say his hair. cut his hair, lose his power. Even Samson believed that. But the more I thought about this story, the more I encountered this strange thing that happens in the Bible, the more that I saw something else, something deeper, and frankly, something more applicable to you and me. We look at Samson as if God put some kind of magic in his mane, some kind of wizardry in his wig, but we're not looking at it closely enough. There's one last verse that will unlock the relevance for you and me. After Samson discloses the real truth about his hair, Delilah cuts it, and she calls the Philistines, and Samson awoke from his sleep and thought, I'll go out as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. No other Nazarite ever had strange level strength like Samson. Even though they also didn't cut their hair, they were normal. The secret to Samson's strength, the secret to his ability to break chains and defeat enemies and wrestle live animals, all of those special powers were really not the result of his hair. His power was always sourced in the presence of God. When God was with him, he was strong and victorious. But when he betrayed God, when he walked away from God, when God was no longer with him, he was no longer plugged into the real source of his strength, which was never his hair in the first place. It was always the presence of God in his life. Samson's story is tragic. He didn't honor God. He wouldn't keep his promises to God. He let his ego grow much stronger than his powerful arms. Samson had the power to break all the chains, everything his enemies put around him. But ironically, he refused to break the chains that ultimately led to his downfall. For him, it was chains of lust, chains of pride, chains of vengeance. God is the source of the real power in our lives, from Samson to you and me. And not just for a select few characters that we look around and we say that person's particularly powerful or close with God, but really the source of power from God is available to ordinary people like you and me too. We may not be able to fight off 1,000 men. We might not be able to kill a lion, but we do have access to all the power we need to overcome every adversary against us. If we would only give ourselves fully to life with God, if we would only be dedicated to life with God like Samson was supposed to be, you and I, we actually do have the ability to tap into a power to break any chain. Samson didn't have to give in to his anger. Instead of moving towards God, though, he fed his appetite for human power, his appetite for women, his appetite for his own ego. Those are the chains that Samson could have chosen to break, but instead he fed them, he gave in to them. We can do that too. We'll spend 3 hours researching something that we want to buy, and then say we just don't have time to invest in our spiritual lives or read the Bible. And we'll commit to work and giving our employer everything we got and commit to exercise or whatever, but we won't show up for our marriage or our kids. We'll rant about the world's morality falling apart on Facebook and then allow it to suck us into its influence and spend hours on it. The power available to Samson to break the strongest chains is available to you too, but you have to lean into it. And the way you do that is through obedience to God. That's how you stay connected to the power source. See, God asked Samson to commit to 3 things in the Nazarite vow. And that's ancient stuff, and that particular thing is not necessarily relevant for you and me. But the real question for us is, what is he asking of you? What is he asking of you? Consider your choice, because how you choose will be the source of your power, superhuman power, or it will become the sorrow of your slavery. You can choose God's power or your own power. And if you choose to live a life that follows God, that gives into that power, He will do superhuman things through you too.
There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. To break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. There's an army rising up. There's an army rising up. There's an army rising up to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. There's an army rising up. There's an army rising up. There's an army rising up to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. To break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. I hear the chains falling. I hear the chains falling. I hear the chains falling. All right, let's sing There is Power. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. To break every chain, break every chain, break every wonder-working power in His name. All right, let's sing that one more time. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus. There is power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain, break every chain. To break every chain, break every chain, break every chain.
We don't have to rely on our own strength to fight against our chains, and we don't have to give in to them either, because God has the power to break every chain. All we have to do is be obedient to Him. So thank you for being here today, and please make sure you invite a friend next week. It's super easy. all you gotta do is click the link in the chat right now and shoot it their way. They'll be invited, you'll get to be here with them next week, and I hope both of you will come back next week as we discover the truth behind another strange thing in the Bible. Bring that friend with you, and we'll see you both then. Oh, and one last time, Happy Mother's Day.